Friends, welcome to a new video. So I don't have any footage of me actually reading these books because with a new reading challenge I'm feeling very stressed about getting my reading goal in, so I'm just trying to read like as much as I can to get kind of ahead. I don't know how much I'll actually get ahead, but my goal of books that I want to read this year is 150 because my physical TBR is 200 books, and it's actually over that now after Christmas and with ebooks that I have and all kinds of things like that. So I want to read as many of the books on this shelf as I can this year because I really also want to go through and like be able to sell the ones that I don't like or re-gift the ones that I don't like, or make sure that I love it and I keep it and then reorganize my bookshelves. But anyway, so with that said, I finished my first series of the year and my first 3 books. So I decided, and this is because in the 24-hour reading video, which if you haven't watched that yet, go check it out. But at the end of that video, I ended on a book that was the first book in a trilogy. And so that book was Once Upon a Broken Heart, which the covers are just absolutely gorgeous, and the series is by Stephanie Garber, who also wrote the Caraval trilogy, and I loved those books. I read them probably in 2018 or 2019, I can't remember now, but I read them back then, so it's been a while. But I did remember the character Jax, who is one of the main characters in this trilogy. So I was really excited about that and to like be back in this world. And I just remember in the Caraval trilogy that Stephanie Garber keeps you guessing. Like, you cannot predict what is gonna happen next. Even if you think you can, she is just so twisty and turny that like you can't figure out what is gonna happen next. So I was very glad that this one was the same way, where you think that you figure out the plot, or you know what's gonna happen, or even you know what's happening, and then you realize you have no idea what's happening. And Evangeline, the main character in this one, is so obsessed with fairy tales and magic and the North, and she just has this big heart, and so she really wants her happily ever after, and she believes that she's gonna get it. But then she makes a deal with Jax, who is a fate, and he is the Prince of Hearts, and she makes a deal with him to save her love from getting married to her stepsister. And that's kind of all I can tell you without spoiling too much. So that's how the series starts. And in the first book, I absolutely did not like Jax. I wanted nothing to do with him. I was like, I don't really get why everyone loves him because I think he's terrible. But then you get to the second book and I was like, all right, I get it. I get why everyone's obsessed. I understand why they like him. I loved this one. This one is probably my favorite in the series, and my nails also match the cover. This one just takes everything that happened in book 1 and just makes it so much worse and better at the same time, and I am obsessed. I just loved this so much. In the first one, Evangeline's favorite fairy tale slash like magical story is The Ballad of the Archer and the Fox, and basically this archer is the best at hunting and all these things, and so this village hires him to kill a fox that has been just like messing with the villagers and stuff like that. And so he goes to kill it, but then he realizes it's a fox that can turn into a woman, and so then he falls in love with the woman, then realizes that she's the fox, and then the curse, nobody ever knows if he killed her or not. And so the second book has that as the main part of the plot in very different ways. Like, there's different features of that curse in this book, and I just loved it so much. I thought it was so clever. The plot was just so well thought out in this one. And the ending, I wish I would have recorded my reaction to the ending because there's kind of 2 endings in this book. I can't say what I mean by that without any spoilers, but the first ending is like, what just happened? It feels like one of those choose your own adventure books, and you can like choose what happens next even though you can't, like it's just in the book. But after that first ending, I'm like, what just happened? And then you get the second ending, which is again, what just happened? And it just made me so mad. So a part of me is really thankful that I didn't start this series before the third one had come out, because that wait had to have been torturous. Like, if you were one of the ones that was waiting for that book, yeah, I'm so sorry about that because I could not imagine. So yeah, so I loved this one. Overall, this one is my favorite one of the series, but then you get to the third one, which I honestly felt like for a third book, like this is the conclusion of the trilogy, and a lot of people were disappointed in it, and I wouldn't say that I'm disappointed, but the plot felt more like the second book. Like I feel like there were elements of this that could have been the second book, and then the actual second book could have been the third book. But I mean, I don't know fully if that would have worked well, but this one just did not feel like the wrap up of the whole conclusion of the series. It did at the end, like the very end, and I don't know, like the stakes weren't as high in this one. It didn't feel as much of a big deal with what was going on in the plot. Like it just felt like it wasn't supposed to be the third book, I guess. But then you get the ending, and I'm not gonna lie, this is kind of a spoiler, but I was expecting a super tragic ending. I was not expecting anything good to happen. So this whole book, I was just like mentally preparing myself for my heart to be like ripped out. And I'm not gonna say anything else about that, but once again, this book is beautiful. And altogether, I would give this series 5 stars. I just loved Evangeline and Jax. I loved their relationship and their dynamic together. I loved Evangeline as a main character. I just thought she was so sweet in how she just pursues her happy ending, and she has hope throughout all of these books. Even though awful, terrible things are happening, I just loved her. And clearly I do not have a matching set because I went ahead and bought myself this book a long time ago and then got these two for Christmas. So at some point I would like to update this one to a hardcover, but I don't need to do that right now. But yeah, overall, I just love Stephanie Garber's writing. She has another book coming out that's actually like a little novella that goes with the Garber trilogy, and I was really hopeful that it was going to be a new series. Like I want a new book series from her, but she doesn't have anything like that coming soon. But that was my first read of the year. I am now reading Firefly Lane, so that's a 2-book duology, and I have the second one right here. It's called Fly Away. But I am gonna start that. I haven't even started it yet, and as of right now, I'm 2 books ahead of schedule because I also read 2 books for work last week. But yeah, I'm just kind of feeling the pressure, but I have enjoyed before bed. I have decided to like put my phone away, and my husband and I watch like an episode of a show, or maybe 2 episodes if we have time, and then I just get in bed and I read for like the last hour of my day. And I really like that. I feel like that's the best way to get reading in, because if you're just picking up a book constantly, then you just sometimes forget, or you don't have your book with you or whatever. But then if it's like you're making the time, prioritizing it, and you know before bed you're gonna go and read your book, it's just been really working for me. So that's my goal for this year, is just keep reading as much as I can and get through a significant amount of these books behind me. January has been a crazy month so far. It is now January 21st, and we have just been getting dumped on with snow. Like within a week, it was just snowing every day, and we probably had like 12 to 15 inches of snow. I'm not 100% sure. But for a weekend, we were snowed in, and then every day after work, we were just home when it was snowing. And so I've read 2, actually 3 more books since the last time I updated you guys, when I read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, and I finally read a Kristen Hanna book. I have not read any of her books, but I've been recommended them, and I've heard that she is a great writer, and I actually watched the first season of the show and I really liked it, and so I added the book to my Goodreads, and then my good friend Alana got it for me, and I just love like this paperback. I just think it is so pretty and really cute. And honestly, I loved this book. It was really long, so it did take me a little bit longer to read, but I was so invested in the story. It's about these 2 best friends, Katie and Tully. And Katie has your typical like good home life. She lives with both of her parents. She has a younger brother, and her dream, which is unknown to her as a little girl because she's best friends with Tully, but her biggest dream is basically to be a mom, like a stay-at-home mom, and take care of her kids and like be married and have this great love story. And then Tully is kind of the opposite of her, and Tully wants to be a professional news anchor. And so they grow up together, they're best friends, and I just loved this book so much. It did kind of put me in a weird headspace because it's so deep and just like sad and nostalgic, and like you follow these two women as they grow up, and so you see them from like, I think they meet when they're 16 or something like that, or no, I think they meet when they're like 13, because it's like right before high school, so they're really little, like just little kids. And you just like read about them growing up, and you read about Kate falling in love, you read about Tully's like journey to becoming this successful woman that she is, and I just loved it so much. But I was not expecting the ending. I did not know what was gonna happen at the end, so it broke my heart. It like completely devastated me, like ripped my heart out. And I knew this book was gonna make me just sob at the end, and it did. It was so beautiful. Like, I will definitely reread this at points of my life because it just follows womanhood and like becoming an adult so well. Like, it just, like I said, it's a nostalgic book where you like think about your childhood and you think about your future, and you just think about like the different ways that your life could go, and like growing up and who you are now versus who you used to be. And I just really loved it. It was such a beautiful book. I'm really excited to read more from her. So I started a list on my phone that's books that I want to buy after I've read all of my TBR, which will take a long time. But I added a couple Kristen Hanna books that I've heard are really good because I want to read more by her. But after I finished this one, I also found Fly Away at a thrift store. So I bought this, and I bought it a while ago actually, and unfortunately it doesn't match my copy of Firefly Lane, but it was a thrift store find, so I was like, I kind of have to get it because I have the first book and I should at least have the second one. And then I took the dust jacket off, and I just think the hardcover is a really beautiful color, so now I'm kind of like, I think I'll just keep them both, even though they don't match. Like, my series doesn't match, but that's not really the biggest deal. I was not as big of a fan of this one just because it takes place more, it's about the side characters from the first one, and it kind of goes into depth about like different things that are happening in their lives, like the side characters. And honestly, I just kind of thought it dragged on a little bit too much. Like, I don't really know that we needed a full novel about all the other characters. I feel like it could have easily been a novella or just like a short story or something, but it is cool to have like their whole experience after the events of Firefly Lane, although it did feel a little bit too long and unnecessary, but I still really liked it. It was still very captivating. But there were elements of like them being childhood best friends, and like the quotes from their childhood and all these things that they had going on in their childhood that felt like too much. Like, it was used multiple times in this one, and I thought it was a little too repetitive. But overall, this series was really beautiful, really good. So I would definitely recommend, if you haven't read anything by Kristen Hanna, this might be a good one to start with, just because you get like a really good feel of her writing style, and it was just so entertaining and so good. And then kind of unexpectedly, so on Instagram, which is always a really fun place to meet authors and other readers, this woman named Faith Prince offered me one of her books, and so I got to read her book, and I just finished it last night. So it's called Where Magic Begins. I'll put the image of it right here. And it's a supernatural, witchy, romantic-y book about these two twins who are actually witches, but they've been banished from like the witch world, and so they live in the human world, and they kind of don't have a good knowledge about their magic. But then they find out that someone is hunting them, and so then the book just kind of takes a turn where like suddenly there's high stakes, they're in danger, they got to figure all these things out. And it wasn't one of my favorite reads, but I would recommend if you want like a good witchy supernatural book. It was a quick read. It's also a shorter book, and it's YA, so it was a very like fast, quick read. It was entertaining, but it just wasn't one of my favorites. But I am super thankful that I had the opportunity to read it. And so far this year, I have read 11 books, which is crazy because it's still January. But like I said, with the storm that we had and all the snow, all we've been doing is staying inside. And then also I have been reading a couple books for work. So this is my stack for fun. And then it is officially January 31st, which means this month is basically over and I will start a new month of reading. So I wanted to wrap up this January video by telling you about one last book that I read this month. And it was Authentically Izzy, which I just grabbed this from a little home library in my town. It was like a quick, I just saw it and grabbed it out of the library. And I had seen it around in bookstores, but I hadn't really like considered it a want to read. And then I found it for free and I was like, you know what? I'll switch it out with one of my books and just see how it is. And if I don't like it, I'll just put it back, whatever. But I actually really love this one, you guys. It is a Christian romance and I just think the author did a really great job. This one seemed super realistic. It was really cute. Basically, this book follows Izzy and her cousin Josephine is trying to set her up with basically anyone in her town. So poor Izzy has gone on like a bunch of dates and nothing has worked out, and then Josephine sets her up on like an online dating website. I forgot. Oh, it's called Heart to Heart. And so Izzy is on the website and she ends up matching with someone named Brody, and Brody is actually from like little European islands, like there's these little islands together. And so they start talking, and at first Izzy doesn't think he's real. She thinks it's her cousin that has like set her up, but he is real. And I will say this book, like, first of all, the cover is so cute and like the color of it and everything, but then there's a map of the islands that Brody lives on, like in the front, which I just thought was so cute because you usually have that in fantasy books, but you don't have that in like romance books. And then also this, like the pages for chapters had this on the side, which I just thought was so cute. It just adds so much little detail because this book is also told mainly through emails. There's a couple text messages, but it's mostly told through emails. So I would give this a 4-star just because I did reach a point where like the emails were too much. It just felt like they stretched on for too long. And I do think this book could have been shorter. It was a pretty like drawn out romance, but I did really enjoy it. I thought it was really cute. Izzy is your typical avid reader, book reader, and so her whole thing is she loves books and she wants to open a bookshop, but she works as a librarian. And so Brody's family actually owns a bunch of bookstores on the islands. And so she eventually goes to visit him, and that part of the book was probably my favorite. And she also learns about the bookstore, and it's just really cool. And Brody's like building his home on this like ocean cliff, which just sounds like a dream. So I was really surprised by this one. I kind of just grabbed it off my shelf and decided to finally read it. And I was a big fan, so it was really cute. But I am very excited because if you follow my Bookstagram, you know exactly why. February is gonna be a really good reading month, but you'll have to stay tuned and subscribe to see why. But thank you guys so much for watching. So far, I have read 15 books this year out of 150. So trying to go strong, but my next read is super thick, so it might put me back a little bit, but I am very excited. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.